right. While everybody else filters in, I'm going to go ahead and get started with intros. Again, thanks for joining us. We're excited to be getting Alibi Cloud VS back in front of you guys. I know it's been a little while since we've had a webinar. Today, we're super excited to really have Bryce Brenden just dive into some of the really key topics and reasons that he's seeing out in the marketplace for dealers who are selling cloud. Bryce does a great job as our cloud specialist, really focused on Alibi Cloud VS, of engaging with our dealer partners, but more importantly, working with those dealer partners to engage with end users to really understand their business needs and reasons for buying Alibi Cloud VS. As everybody knows, we launched Alibi Cloud VS about 3 years ago, and back in 2019, it was really new technology, and we've really seen the adoption curve really escalate over the last year. There's a lot more end user demand that's bubbling up for cloud surveillance. A lot of businesses are moving a lot of their business operations, whether it's ERP systems, IT infrastructure, up to the cloud, right? And Bryce is on the front lines of understanding those needs and then working with our dealer partners to really help deliver solutions that meet those customer needs. So when we talk about Alibi Cloud, there's a lot to consider. The solution does a lot, but today what we're going to have Bryce focus on is really the top 5 reasons that you should be selling cloud video surveillance to end users, right? And at least making it part of your offering whenever you're going into quote video surveillance systems. So we'll do real quick introductions, kind of rules of the road for the webinar, and then we'll let Bryce jump in. So I'm Chris Miller, I'm the Director of Marketing. I'm just here facilitating the conversation. I'll be answering, really monitoring Q&A along the way. As I mentioned, we've got Bryce Brenden, who's our cloud sales specialist. He's involved day in, day out on selling cloud, working with our dealer partners on engaging end users. And then we've also got Robbie Thomas, who's our Director of Sales, who also is very involved on a day-to-day basis with our dealer partners, understanding their needs, making sure that Bryce gets brought into the conversation whenever cloud video surveillance becomes a topic of interest. So we've got the 2 main experts at the company here who will really hand the reins over to Bryce. Robbie will chime in with some of the things that he sees and hears from our dealer partners, which is really, really important. And we'll cover a lot of territory today quickly. But more importantly, as we go through the webinar, if you have questions along the way, right, we're going to cover a lot. Hopefully we address a lot of those questions along the way. If you have questions, use the Q&A feature down in the bottom of the webinar and post those. I'll be monitoring the Q&A. Robbie will as well, and we'll try to address those questions on each of the topics, okay? So Bryce, if you go to the next slide. For those of you that may not know everything about Alibi Security or may know a little bit, we are a value-added provider, right? We're a value-added distributor of products. We sell a lot of cameras and recorders that we tailor to our dealer needs. We listen to our dealers a lot. That's one of the things we really pride ourselves on, is listening to you guys and gals and building in technology, features, chipsets that really help you guys deliver exceptional video surveillance out there. And then obviously the cloud part of our business has been a burgeoning part of our business, with Alibi Cloud VS really being the focus for this session, and is really leading the way for us from a cloud video surveillance perspective. And we're always looking at new technologies based on your feedback to bring to market, right? We continue to get dealer feedback on Alibi Cloud VS. Since we've launched it, we've added numerous features and functionality into that solution to make it even better and more robust to help you guys and gals address your customer needs. So we're always looking on the forefront of technology and video surveillance solutions to bring you really cutting edge stuff and stuff that will help you ultimately grow your business. So with that, as I mentioned, use Q&A if you got questions along the way. Other than that, I'm going to hand it over to Bryce to talk about the top 5 reasons why you need to be selling cloud video surveillance in your business.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Hey, good morning, everybody. As always, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit with us. I think that this is one of the webinars that I'm most excited to share, because what we've done a lot of in the past is, share with you the technical capabilities and then apply them to different, customer bases. But sometimes we miss out on explaining, to our dealer partners, hey, what's in it for you, right? What is this going to look like? How is this going to make a positive impact on your business? And then you can go and pass it along to your customers, right? So just kind of getting into it. If you're not aware of Cloud VS, it's a direct camera to cloud platform. So we're totally doing away with any on-site recording devices whatsoever. So we're not going to have a recorder. We're not going to have a bridge. Because we're overcoming these recorders and these bridges being our main limiting factor, we're really moving away from those on-site devices being the brain of our system, and we're moving over to the cloud being the brain. So we get a lot of capabilities by making that transition, because we're no longer relying on one computer or one brain. We're using an entire building's worth. So obviously we get a lot of capabilities because of that. And I'm going to hit on, the main 3 S's that we always like to say about our cloud solution. It's simple, it's scalable, and it's secure. And I'll go through each of those points in detail. So now we're going to jump right into it. We're just going to give you the top 5 reasons that we have really seen, our dealers tell us that, are positive impacts on their business. So this is really, when you're looking for, hey, what's in it for me, this really should be the most applicable talking points. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bounce back and forth. I'm going to give you a brief explanation, and then I'm actually going to jump over and show you what it looks like in the real world, in the field, on the actual software. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Number 5, it's going to save you time on your installs. So I can't tell you how many dealer partners and even end users I talk to where there's a very large pain point around the time that it takes to get a system operational. And this varies depending on what you're installing. But if you think about your typical camera install in an NVR, for example, having to do things like, let's say, port forward, huge pain point. It adds a lot of variables that can dramatically slow down your install time. If you're working with anything that's not plug and play, or if you have to go in and create any type of, let's say like a medical facility, they may have to create like a VPN or to view remotely, right? All of these pain points that we run into on traditional security systems basically go out the window when you go to cloud. So from a high level, the only thing that you have to do to install a cloud system or a cloud camera is plug it up, power an internet, run it back to a PoE switch, or we do have some Wi-Fi models as well, but 99% of them are going to be PoE. You're going to actually click add device, which I'll show you in a second. And you're just going to link that camera. And then once you link it to the cloud account, that account is going to become, your common denominator wherever you want to put that camera. So you can even do things like, let's say you want to, add your camera to the account at your shop, and then actually take it from your shop to the customer's location, plug it up, and leave. It's extremely simple. So you can actually basically knock out your configuration before you're even on the customer's site. So really fast, I want to show you just what that looks like on our actual software. So it's very simple. You can see here, we've got a account here that's got 45 cameras with the ability to add more to it. So if we want to add a device, we click add device, as you would imagine. We're going to give it a name. We're going to assign it to whatever zone we would like it to be in. And zones can be anywhere. They can be different properties, different sections of the property, whatever you'd like. And then we're going to put in the MAC address. And there's actually other applications that have land discovery as well. So you kind of get to pick what you like best. You can either add it just by simply punching in the MAC address, linking it to the account. You don't even have to be on the same network as the camera to do it this way. Or if you want to do it land discovery, it'll auto detect the cameras on the same network as your device. You click connect, it links, and then boom, you're out of there and you're done. Once that camera links, you're basically going to be fully operational at that point. It's going to show up on your dashboard view. You're going to immediately have access to the live view. It's going to start recording immediately. without you having to go in and do any further configurations really whatsoever. So if you're running into those pain points of, spending too much time configuring a system for your customer, or having to worry about sending the right employee or the right technician out to each of these jobs to set up those systems, you can actually, dramatically reduce the complexity of your installs when you move over to the cloud.
So Bryce, I think from a simplicity perspective, the interface you're showing here, I obviously know is for a local restaurant chain that has multiple locations around the Austin area, right?
Correct.
Just to kind of talk through, right? They didn't do every location at one time, right? They implemented cloud in one location, said, hey, we really like this. We like the flexibility. We like the user interface. We like how simple it is. We want to add more locations. Well, what happened when they wanted to add more locations, right? I mean, that's really where it becomes really, really simple, because it all goes into this one account.
That's a great call out, Chris. So this is a great example, this customer specifically, of how easy it is to scale and rapidly expand, post your first sale. So this company in particular started with 3 locations of cameras, and they've actually grown to, I believe it's 7 now. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of how easy it is to actually scale and install these cameras, the second wave of locations, the additional 4 locations, were actually in a different city. They were in Houston, whereas the other 3 were in Austin. So what the dealer did is they actually just onboarded the cameras, made the configurations, about 60-second a camera, put them back in the box and shipped them. The customer took them out of the box, plugged them in, and they worked immediately. So scaling, to Chris's point, is extremely easy, because we're not worried about, hey, are we going to run out of channel counts? If we add cameras in the future, what is this going to do to our hard drive space? Will these cameras play nice with this NVR long term, right? All those little question marks go away.
Hey guys, Robbie here. Bryce, I'd also like to plug in a point that a lot of the dealers have been giving us feedback on, is when they're going to scale and they're subcontracting out, or they are having labor issues, which a lot of dealers around the country are currently having. When they move to cloud, they don't have to have the lead tech go on site and do a lot of the configuration, right? They're able to send their cable puller to go pull the cable, mount point camera, and walk away. So from a cost of doing business, it's a lot easier when they're doing cloud, and we're getting that feedback daily. And even on the rollouts that are around the country, they're like, yeah, when we subcontract this out, even our subcontractors, they don't have to bake in labor cost of needing to send their top guy, right? Because there's no real programming. It's run cable, put in camera, done. So kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about like benefits or features. That's one that we continue to hear. So.
For sure. Yeah, great call out. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next point. We're going to go to number 4. Minimize ongoing maintenance. And depending on who I'm talking to, this could be your number 1. This kind of goes along the same lines of point 5, in the sense that our entire goal on cloud for you as one of our dealer partners is to dramatically reduce the amount of time that you're spending with your customers post sale on things that are service related. So for example, we're getting rid of the most common fail points in the entire system. So cameras on average will last a pretty long time because they don't have many moving components, right? Really any. The moving components, the recorder, the hard drive, right? Especially, those are going to be the things that are not going to last quite as long. So those are going to obviously fail at some point and then require, more likely than not, a truck roll, at the very least a service call. There are also some other things that you have to keep tabs on an NVR-based system just to keep the system healthy long term. So firmware updating is very front of mind for a lot of our partners, but also if you think about cybersecurity updates, I mean, really anything the system would need to run healthy long term, that's really a bit of a manual process in a lot of different recorder-based systems. Also, we put in feature additions there. This is an added benefit as well, because you're no longer driving your system off the lot and it immediately depreciates and tanks in value. With cloud, when we roll something out, you just get it. All your customers get access to every capability that we release without any additional cost to them. So it's a system that actually appreciates over time versus depreciates, which is pretty rare in the security space. Point 3 is one of the biggest pain points that I hear specifically, and it's, if your ISP makes a change or if the router gets changed and you've got it, your IP scheme to set up on your NVR, your DVR, and you're viewing it remotely, that change can really impact your accessibility to the system. And most end users aren't going to be able to go in and fix that problem on their own. It's probably going to take a little bit of a handhold from you. So again, this is another one of those instances where you're probably going to be rolling a truck. Whereas on the cloud, the camera doesn't really care where the internet connection comes from. As long as it gets that IP address or that DHCP, you can put it wherever you want. You could change the router 10 times. As long as it gets an IP address, it's going to come online and actually come right back to your account. So one of, if not the biggest talking points that I discuss with actual customers, because one thing I do is I do a lot of I partner with dealers and I do presentations for end users a lot, or we do, I guess I should say. And we see a lot of the time that end users aren't necessarily pros when it comes to utilizing their own recorder-based systems. It's not as intuitive as some of the other applications that they're used to using on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot to be said about the cloud and how easy it is to use, because we find that the easier it is for your customer to use, the less amount of time they're going to be picking up the phone and calling you and asking you questions or requesting that you come to the location to help them. So user independence is a huge cloud benefit, because you really should be able to give your customers the keys to the system and take off without needing to continually handhold them. And then obviously all that time you're saving by not having to handhold customers post-sale is time that you can spend going out and capturing new business. And then we added a couple other features as well that are, again, just going to help you save truck rolls. So I'll pop over and show you this now. We've added a couple new features here. So the one that's most front of mind for me is the remote reboot feature. So one of the only things that can knock a cloud camera offline is if something funky is going on with the internet. And we find that on average, if you just power cycle the camera, it reaches out and starts looking for that IP address again. It's going to fix your problem the majority of the time. And we've actually added a button here. So you can see here down at the bottom, I can reboot the camera right from here. The same thing goes for firmware updating. So you'll notice right here, I'm up to date. If I did have a new firmware version available, I would have a prompt here, and all I would actually have to do is click update, and that would do the update for me. So again, you can see here, both in theory and in practice, there's not a whole lot that would happen on a cloud system long-term that would actually cause you to have to roll a truck. Unless you have a physical hardware problem with either the camera itself or the cable or the internet connection, which I find to be less frequent than a lot of other problems with security cameras. You're going to be able to get on your system, manage this remotely in 30 seconds and take off and be done with it. So it's extremely hands-off. So moving on. This is a little bit more abstract, I guess. This could apply to both you and your customers. And this has really been, very apparent in certain verticals. And it's your ability with cloud to meet complex compliance requirements very easily in comparison to an NVR-based system. So a lot of the verticals that are going to be, really looking for this, it's going to have to do with the lack of port forwarding and how secure that remote connection is. So you can see at the bottom, we've got a couple great examples here. The most front of mind for me is medical, because they have such strict network laws. Typically what a medical facility or a retail facility would have to do to actually remote view their cameras is they would actually have to go in and set up a VPN in order to remote view them, or they would just not have the capability to remote view, which obviously, if you're paying for a commercial grade security system, you want to be able to view it when you're not at the location for obvious reasons. So what's been really, really nice and well received about the cloud is that we can go in and actually just install these cameras the exact same way that we normally would without changing a single thing about the plug and play and the actual linking process. And this connection is automatically 100% secure. So there's actually not going to be any network traffic coming back into your customer's network, which is really where you start getting the risk. Because if you're port forwarding and somebody's coming back in, they're basically waiting for that door to open. Boom, they can get right in once you view the camera, right? So with cloud, we don't have that weak point. It's a extremely outbound secure, so only outbound secure connection. And then, yeah, you can give, let's say, like a multi-site chiropractor or pharmacy, right? We can give them the ability to remote view without having to really change a thing. The same thing goes if you're working with certain industries that require a high number of days of storage. So it can be a little bit scary sometimes to sell, let's say, to like a cannabis facility where a lot of states require and mandate that you have 90 days of 24/7 recording. Well, it can be a little bit worrisome if you're on an NVR because number one, you got to do the calculations to make sure that you have 90 days. If somebody goes in and changes the setting, the frames per second, the resolution, whatever, and bumps that up and increases the load, they could dramatically reduce the number of days you're storing without even knowing it until it's too late. And then boom, you're getting popped with a fine from the state. So what's great about the cloud is we can guarantee the number of days of storage that you have on your system. And that's just your license, right? So you can go 7 days, you can go 14 days, 30 days, all the way up to 2 years. And you can actually have a lot of peace of mind knowing that when you go back and look for that footage, it's going to be there and it's going to be exactly what your, compliance requirements require. On the same talking point, I like to talk about the actual structure of the cloud because there's a very common misconception in the marketplace right now that cloud is somehow inherently insecure or non-secure because it's going through the internet. And this really couldn't be much further from the truth. So because obviously we're not port forwarding, that right there is going to eliminate a huge chunk of our vulnerability right there. Also, the data centers that we're using are like state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line data centers. We're not just farming it out to like an AWS server, like a tier 2, tier 3. We actually use a tier 4 center, which if any of you are familiar with that kind of category, it basically puts them in the elite category. So there are a lot of criteria that you have to meet in order to be able to classify yourself as a tier 4 center. And this is the same level of center that actually the top financial institutions in the world are using. So it's the same requirements of a mobile banking application, for example. So you have to have, number one, you have to have end-to-end encryption. So from the second that data is getting stored on the camera all the way until it gets to the actual data center, it's encrypted. Triple redundancy. So your backup hard drive in the data center has a backup hard drive. So your chances of losing data is extremely minimal. 99.995% availability. So this has to do with the uptime of the system. So the overall downtime over the course of a year has to be, I think it's under 32 minutes in total for you to meet that requirement. And then the actual infrastructure obviously is very specialized and very protected against cyber attacks or anything that would try to take the system down. And then obviously it's US based. So this is a huge talking point. It's one of the first things people ask for typically when you're talking about your data center is, hey, where's it at? Are we farming this out to another country or is it US based? So the one that we use primarily is in Austin, Texas. All the data centers that we use are US based. So no worries there. Chris or Robbie, would you have anything to add on the data center piece?
Well, probably what I would add is when we talk to dealers that have been in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years in some cases, they think about security. And then when they think about on-prem, they feel more secure about that. And the reason why is because they've done that type of install thousands of times. And then when we start talking about cloud, sometimes the dealers having trouble translating the security of the cloud is as secure, if not more secure, than on-prem, and they lose that ability as they're transferring it to their customer, right? And what we really want to kind of cover here is it's very, very hard for you to lose data. It's so hard that the only way it would really happen is if the location quits having power. That's where it's at, right? Which would impact on-premise or cloud alike. So there's no real risk when you're moving into the cloud, because even if you lose internet temporarily, it records on the camera, then it uploads that data to the cloud. If there's a server issue at one of the locations, because it's a tier 4 data center, there's a fail safe where it rolls over, and there's like, we have a San Diego, I want to say, and then a Austin or a Dallas location. So that there's really no way to lose data. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would drive in when you're talking to an integrator who's mainly doing on-prem, who wants to get into cloud, but moreover, helping them be able to translate that over to their customer if their customer has those questions, right? And so that's kind of what we hear from integrators that are really have done more on-prem than cloud, and they're trying to do the transition because they see so many other companies doing it. That's what really kind of comes to mind past just, you know, what is tier 4, you know? So, Bryce.
Yeah, and that's a really great call out, because one of the most common questions that I get asked and that you all will get asked by your customers is, hey, this is an internet-based recording. What happens if the internet goes down, right? So to Robbie's point, having that SD card failover put in place, and then actually the automatic upload back to the cloud, it's an extremely seamless process, because what you're not having to do is climb up on a ladder to retrieve that SD card or be there locally at the site to actually pull that data. So it's ready for you to grab right from the cloud environment. And in most cases, you actually probably won't even notice that you had an internet outage. So yeah, that's a great call out. So moving on, number 2, ultra scalable and easy to manage. So we've hit on this a little bit already, but just to kind of reiterate, whenever you're pitching a system to one of your customers and they have multiple locations, your brain should immediately go to cloud. Not only are you going to be giving them a much more seamless and smooth setup on the technical side and giving them a lot of technical benefits, you are also going to make it much, much easier on yourself to actually manage systems like this and systems of this scale. So there are a couple of talking points, specific points that really kind of highlight this. So number 1, you can have an unlimited number of locations and cameras. So, if you're working with a franchise customer and they want to do 35 locations to start and 35 a month, go crazy, go ahead and do it. And then all those locations are tied back to you as one of our dealer partners for you to go in and have actually remote access to and manage them in a really seamless, smooth way. Also, you can get very granular and very segmented on how you actually want to set these cameras up on the system. So you can create little subcategories of cameras and actually name them very specifically, so that out of a large number of cameras, we can actually go and find one specific camera or one specific group of cameras very quickly and very efficiently. And I'll show you that here in a second as well. Users as well. This tends to go hand in hand with a multi-site deployment, but it also applies to other businesses as well. If you've got a customer that wants a lot of users to have access to a system, especially if they want a lot of users to view at the same time, cloud is going to be the way to go for a couple of reasons. So number 1, it's going to actually allow an unlimited amount of users with unique access, which I'll actually show you that in a second as well. But number 2, when you view a camera feed on the cloud, you are actually not relying on your customer's network for that network load. You're relying on a data center. So we do daycares, pet boarding facilities. I've done like horse stables, anything where you want to have a high volume of people logged in at one time and looking at those cameras at the same time. Cloud is going to actually avoid bandwidth duplication and give you the capability to actually do it without crashing the network into the ground. And then the last point there, which I'll actually kind of transition over and show you now. Every user that you give access to the system, you have a lot of controls over how you want to divvy out access to these customers. So that being said, we'll pick a random user here. We'll go with this one. So we can come in here and we can actually decide, okay, this user, you are allowed to do these things, but not the things that are grayed out, right? So obviously for what that means for you is, and for your customer, is you can actually give out access and give people the keys to this system without having to worry about them making a configuration change and crashing the system into the ground. So very, very easy, very granular on how you want to grant access there. You can do the exact same thing on the camera level as well. So we can come in here, and this is a good example because we have multiple different properties here. Let's say, okay, you are the property manager for the Anderson Mill group or the Anderson Mill location. We're going to give you access to Anderson Mill, but not to the Cutton location. Let's say, okay, you don't need to see the prep area camera or the to-go register, whatever we want to do. We can get rid of access there as well. And also, every single thing that a user does on a cloud account is very trackable and very black and white. So we've got a full audit trail. If we go to our audit log section right here, and all of these activities, basically anything somebody does in the system, all the way down to logging in, as you can see here, is tracked on the system. So if something is done that is malicious or accidental and it's stupid, not a whole lot of gray area on who did what. So very easy. And then I do just want to kind of point out the multi-site management again. We can come up here and actually search for specific cameras across different zones. So if I wanted to say, okay, show me the office cameras. Boom, there's the offices across 3 locations. Show me the registers. If I can spell register, there we go. And now we've got the registers, right? So you can see how you can take a very high volume of cameras and go in and access them and manage them in a very smooth, seamless way. And jumping back over here to our last point, generate RMR. You guys probably all knew that this one was coming, the golden goose. So this is something that's actually evolved a little bit, probably since the last time we were talking to you. So the overarching theme of the subscription revenue is obviously you're making RMR, or recurring revenue, really is what we should be saying, on a monthly or an annual basis, or even a multi-year basis. So regardless of what frequency you're selling it, this is money that's just going to continue to pay you as long as the customer has the system. One thing that we've been finding a lot of success with is actually really leaning on the annual subscriptions, and even multi-year subscriptions is something we're getting more and more into, just simply due to customer requests. Because what we're finding is that, very similar to your typical NVR DVR customer, a lot of customers have a budget that they're looking to spend right now as a capital expense. And some of them are looking to minimize their ongoing expenses or their operational expenses. And this is one of the biggest points that I hear dealers struggle with is, hey, our customer doesn't like ongoing cost. It's not even necessarily the cost itself, other than the fact that they don't want to continue to have to pay. So we've been building a lot of value and saying, okay, you can pay for whatever licensing you want on the upfront, pay for a year, pay for 3 years, pay for 5 years. And then what they'll basically guarantee themselves is no operational expenses. So it was a little bit counterintuitive at first when we're saying, okay, people are wanting to pay more money and it's making it easier to sell the product. Well, it didn't really compute at first, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about, certain types of businesses that have to go out and secure funding, or, they have a 3-year budget, right? So we wanted to kind of highlight this and let you guys know that you have the flexibility to actually position it this way, because it's not only, a good answer for those customers that request it. It's actually something that we've started to lead with, and it's really actually helped adoption, especially on large projects. And then also, we do see certain verticals go this way as well. So if you think about like a nonprofit organization, like we've been working with a lot of those, they go out and secure grants for their funding, right? And they may only get a grant every 2-3 years. So an ongoing expense for them can be a little bit worrisome, whereas they probably have the capital on the upfront, right? So just by changing the way we're positioning the cost, it makes your customers more receptive to it. And then if you have those customers that don't want to pay for it upfront, fine, yeah, let's do the monthly. Let's roll it out monthly. Let's spread it out and make it an OpEx. So as long as you guys know we have the flexibility, that's the main goal.
And I'd like to add, and you kind of touched on this, a lot of our integrators are going out and they're talking, and it's past just a budget of do they have the money now with their customer, but sometimes their customer CFO may say, hey, we need to do 1 year, 3 years, or whatever they're looking at from like a capital expenditure on how they're going to do the breakdown, and for taxes and whatnot. So a lot of times by selling a longer subscription, you end up winning the project because it allows that CFO to code it differently on their side, which is what they're kind of looking at always as well, right? So because sometimes they're looking at like, cash flow now, and then other times they're looking at like, how am I going to write this down, and how am I going to, file this with our business model? And so the longer subscriptions, quite honestly, seem to be from our industry taking hold a lot stronger than the monthly ones, with not just our company, but I'm seeing it from other companies as well. So little plug.
Definitely. And actually, I'm gonna jump ahead a slide real fast, and I'm gonna come back to Q&A. So one thing I really wanted to highlight was, we've kind of explained why buy cloud, right? Why would you sell cloud or buy cloud versus a traditional system? But the next big question that is, very, very important to kind of come back after the fact and answer is, okay, why would you sell our cloud? And cloud is pretty unique in the sense that it's different than like traditional IP systems or analog systems. For the most part, a lot of IP systems can be very similar, right? But when you move over to the cloud, we find that typically everybody has a unique kind of niche and different approach. And so it's really important that you understand with our Alibi Cloud BS platform, not only its capabilities, but also its positioning and really where we're looking to target this when we're speaking to both you and users. So there's a lot of cloud out there. I'm sure the majority of you have seen at least a couple of these names before that are on the screen. We find that whether you're looking at, some of the more enterprise level ones on the bottom or the more residential targeted ones on the top, cloud is very much reserved at the extreme ends of the marketplace right now. You've got very, very cheap residential focused products. So Ring, Arlo, Nest, Simply Safe even, those are good examples of that. But then we also notice way over on the other extreme, if you've ever worked with Cisco Meraki, Rhombus, Verkada, those are the complete opposite. They're very feature robust, but they're also extremely expensive and typically around $1,000 plus per camera, plus the licensing fees. So as a dealer, it's not as, an easy pitch to your end users selling something that's $1,000 plus a camera. It's not super palatable. So we recognize this pretty early on, and we really kind of we're looking through that lens. We're building out our feature set and deciding where we wanted to target with this product, and we really landed on kind of that mid market that a lot of you are already selling in right now with your NVRs and DVRs. And this is a really, really key takeaway because there's a need out there in the marketplace right now that people are looking for a commercial grade cloud solution that kind of checks the boxes of what would make a system commercial grade, but without that giant enterprise level price tag. And you would think that more people have caught on to this by now, but honestly, it's almost just kind of sitting there waiting for us to go grab it right now. And prime example, I was working with one of our dealer partners that specializes in the self-storage industry the other day, and they go to national trade shows all the time, and they're constantly seeing different enterprise level cloud solutions, right? So just by them going and saying, hey, we have this solution that will do the things that you're looking for it to do without some of the fringe stuff that makes the cost 7x or whatever it is. And we can do it for them, and we can do it for a drastically lower price tag. And that pitch is very well received by end users right now, especially in verticals that are saying, hey, if you're not giving me a cloud quote, don't give me a quote, right? Medical, cannabis, education. There's so many verticals that are moving this direction. And you, as one of our dealers, are going to have a really, really good chance to go and win this business versus what else is out there, simply because it's such a better value. And now I'll go ahead and let you guys ask questions if you'd like to.
Yeah, thanks, Bryce. We just have one question right now. I think you've covered a lot of ground. I think you've really hit on a lot of the key points that people join the webinar for. This question is really about the video storage, right? So Robert says he's got some folks at a church who are interested, but they're concerned about how the data is stored, right? And they're worried about images or footage showing up on the dark web, right?
Sure.
So why don't you address that real quick?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll say it's a totally reasonable concern with some of the news articles that have come out in the past couple of years, right? So this is one of those huge talking points and one of those main criteria that really separates this product and makes it commercial grade versus some of the others. So there's some companies that have gotten in trouble because they didn't have very good security protocol in place. And I can tell you specifically, a lot of the times when you look at those breaches, it had to do with actual, the company themselves, whoever was manufacturing and selling those cameras, actually had the ability to go in and look at the cameras without the end user even giving them permission. We don't do that. We've never done that. So we have the ability to go in and access customer systems as well as you all will have the ability to, and you can go in and access their systems for support reasons. But you or us, we cannot do that unless the end user manually goes in and gives us permission to do that. So if they don't do that, it's a totally closed system. Even though we can see that they're, how many cameras they have and if they're online or offline, we can't see any data unless they specifically grant us access. And that's going to be that added layer of protection that really kind of separates us from a lot of those lower end products.
Right. So as a dealer, when you're selling the solution, you'll have access, right? The end user will have access. Whoever they set up at their location, at the various locations, will have access, but it's all auditable. It's all tracked within the solution. So if you're worried about, footage showing up somewhere, well, footage shows up somewhere, it's going to be date and time stamped, I believe. And then you're going to be able to go back into that solution and find out who accessed and downloaded that footage, right? So the controls are in the hands of the end user, first and foremost, and who they grant access to, right? It's not like it's this broad super admin password that everybody has access to and they can log on to any cloud solution anywhere in the world with Alibi Cloud VS. It is very tightly controlled, and that main admin user has access, and they set up users in the solution, which you can track who was set up, and then you can track access by those users and what they're doing on the solution. So it's very, very secure. So
that's the only question.
Yeah, that was the only question right now. I want to hit just on a couple things, right? So well, here's another question just popped up. So what's the max SD card support in the cameras?
So you can go up to 256 in a lot of our cameras. I very rarely ever personally recommend over a 64 gigabyte card.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that is because, the typical internet outage isn't, hey, we had a hurricane, we're down for 5 days. That's not really the main reason. It's more so, hey, our ISP drops for 5 minutes every other day, or an hour or 3 hours, or whatever it may be. So a 64 gig card will give you that time frame and then some. So I would highly recommend you just go with a 64 unless you have like a really specific need to go larger than that.
Yeah, and I'd also layer in, a lot of times people hear oh, 64 is not very big. And you're like, well, it's per camera. So you add them all together, right? It's not like you're taking one little SD card and trying to spread it to 8, 10 cameras on site, right? So, the goal is to give you a day or so worth of gap outage and just know that it's going to override. And that's usually more than enough. And it also minimizes your cost. And if you're worried about it, we can go up on size. But, regardless if, when we hear people say, oh, the budget doesn't matter, typically it does matter at some point. So we're always cautious to make sure that we set you up for success on not just it functioning well, but also winning the job, right? So, but we let you help us decide on which path you want to take. So.
Yeah, but I do think it's a great question and a great upsell, right? I mean, every cloud camera you sell, you should have an SD card attached to it. It's a great fail safe. It really does just help mitigate those instances where the internet goes out, and if it goes out for an extended period of time, you've got that backup, then it automatically syncs back to the cloud. So, so we just had another question coming. So, internet upload speeds. So when you're talking to customers and you're talking about their internet connection, right? And we're talking about, giving them a solution that really works, right? We don't have bottlenecks and stuff. We are really focused on upload speeds, right? It's how that video is getting up to the cloud. So when you're talking to end users, Bryce, what are those things that you hit on or talk about to make sure that they've got a solution that really works well?
Sure. Yeah, great question. I figured that one was coming at some point. So the good news is that the way that we have it designed, and when I say the way we have it designed, I mean really the way that we use our compression ratio to make low resolution footage look really, really good. It helps us keep the bandwidth usage pretty low. So we've got two different recording qualities. The lower of the two, you only need about 0.5 megabit per second per camera, and that's going to be pretty rock solid. If you're going with the higher resolution, I'd like you to be closer to 1. And then if you're going to be doing anything on top of that, let's say it's, you want to go really high frame rate in a really busy area, I may tell you to go closer to 1.5 for cameras in those scenarios. But you figure your absolute worst case scenario on a cloud camera is 2 megabit per second. And I've personally never seen a camera use that much. So if you're going out and speccing a job and you want to put the pedal to the floor and be 100% sure that you're never going to go over that usage point, spec 2 megabit per second. And the great thing is that for the customers that are moving this way, especially those certain verticals, bandwidth was a barrier about 3 years ago for some businesses, but it's pretty rare that businesses can't support it now, unless you've got, someone wants to put 20 cameras on a 3 megabit up DSL connection, then we may move you back over to the IP side, but it's not as big of a barrier as most of our dealers are anticipating anymore.
And just to kind of put this out here, I've watched Bryce and them get it down to like 128 kilobytes per channel when they've had to make it, and it still looks really good. So probably wouldn't recommend that. And it's Bryce did not, but we're able to do quite a lot, and it's really impressive. So obviously great questions. And when you're scoping out which direction you're going to go with the project, all of that's important. So it's one of the value adds that when you're talking to Bryce and his team that they bring to the table, because they're gonna drill down on those questions real quick to make sure that you're set up for success. Also, I saw another question come across on the SD card. It said, will the SD card come pre-installed in the cameras? Bryce, if you want to answer that.
So we don't pre-install them typically. We have them as an optional item. Basically, any quote you get from us will have a SD card added to it and say optional but highly recommended. So basically, we're screaming at you to buy the dang thing. It's pretty darn easy to put it in the camera. We've actually got a video on our YouTube channel completely dedicated to not only the installation of the card, but also making sure that you format it properly, make sure you've got the sync turned on. Anything and everything that you would ever need to set it up properly will be there sitting for you. And I'd say it's 30 to 60 seconds a camera. So it's not too brutal.
Yeah, you literally remove the 2 screws, the bay goes down, you click it in, you put it put the 2 screws back. So relatively easy, nothing complex.
Hey, Bryce, I think it's worthwhile, since we're talking about some of these capabilities by camera, right? I think and maybe you can jump into the interface and show people this. When you have the SD card installed in the camera, there's actually a button you need to click to enable that SD card backup, correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Yep.
And so that's one thing. And then the second thing is, when we talk about upload bandwidth, right? We give you the ability by camera to play around with the bandwidth consumption for that camera. I mean, you can change frame rates, right? FPS. You can change
For sure.
like maximum bandwidth usage. So we give you the ability in this solution to manage that, so you're delivering a really great experience for your end user.
Yeah. So to Chris's point, if you're installing an SD card, all you do is plug it in. This one actually doesn't have one, of course, but if you had a big SD card in here, it actually have a big format button right here. So all you do is click format. That's it. And then this edge storage cloud sync, that's going to be your automatic pushback. So all you got to do is turn that on. When you turn it on, it's going to say, hey, make sure you got X, Y, and Z, which we've already kind of hit on. And then that's it. And you're done. And again, that video goes over all that. It's actually pretty easy. And then to Chris's other point on the bandwidth usage, let's say you set up a customer and they ran a speed test on a good day, but their typical day isn't quite as good. Then they're running a little bit suboptimal. So we can actually come in here and we can control resolution. We can control frames per second. We can put a ceiling and say, okay, camera, you're not allowed to use more than this. And then based off of what we tell the camera to do, it's going to adjust the actual image and the frames per second. And then it's going to work based off of what we've told it can't go over. So if you are working with a customer that has suboptimal internet or can't quite get to 1.5 megabit per second or whatever you're needing to spec out for your job, don't worry, because there are some controllables. So unless you've got, an extremely large spread where they're going to want to do a lot of cameras on a tiny little upload pipe, we can usually make it work.
Yeah, and I'd also put in a plug. All of our cameras, whether they're for on-premise or cloud, and in many cases they're interoperable, they're set up with a variable bit rate, which means, the 1024 is your governor, like on your truck, it's your cap. But the way it actually looks on the algorithm when it's doing the H265 and the refresh rates is it's looking for pixel change on every time it's looking at it. And if there's not a lot of pixel change, then it doesn't transmit a lot of data because it already has the main frame already sent across. So, you may see in many cases where it's using 256 almost all day long because there's just not a lot of movement in that area. And it has a little peaks that'll come up to the 1 meg, but for the most part, it's going down. And we do that, to help bandwidth. On-premise, for example, we do it to help with storage, increasing storage, but it's a default in the way our cameras are designed. So
yeah, great call out. And to Robbie's point, since like this camera, for example, it's capped at about 1 megabit per second. If it only needs half a meg, it's only going to use half a meg. Just because we're telling it is allowed to use this much doesn't mean that it's going to.
Right. And then there will be some scenarios, you think about the table tennis facility, the volleyball facility that we've installed cloud cameras in, where you have a lot of scene change in motion, where you'll need a little bit higher bandwidth cap in order to transmit those images properly, right? But that's high speed, that's a lot of movement, that's sports activity. To Robbie's point, most of the time, when people are looking at, a field of view for a storage facility, there's not a lot of motion going on there, right? They're watching the back door of a restaurant, right? Well, you got trucks coming in once a day, twice a day, and that's about it. Otherwise, they're not going to be using tons of bandwidth. So you just want to kind of want to make sure you set that to accommodate kind of the busiest time in that field of view. So all good stuff. So on the last few things here, and we'll get everybody off the call and back to work. We appreciate the time. If you've not had a call with our cloud team to get certified, we recommend that. All that is getting a quick demo, having a quick conversation with Bryce or Kenneth, and we check you as certified. What this does is it gives you priority for leads that come in. I'm copied on all the leads we get in via email every day. We get leads coming in every single day with interest on cloud, right? There's just a lot more end user interest, and they're finding us because we're out marketing cloud, and then we pass those real leads on to you guys. More importantly, we give you access to our cloud team. Bryce is not only here for to help make us smarter, he's here to help make you smarter, right? And if you're not comfortable selling cloud, he is available, or Kenneth is available to get on calls with your end users, right? If you have somebody who's interested in cloud, get our team on the line to help ask those questions, to help really probe a little bit deeper, so we are designing and coming up with the best solution for them, right? If they're interested in cloud, we can help you close those deals, right? That's what we're here for. We've got tons of resources and tools that we make available to you once you become certified. Sales slicks, marketing assets. We've got email templates that we give you access to. Get certified. And again, simple, it's easy, it's free, and you get access to a lot of those. And then we also give you a microsite that helps you kind of get the word out for cloud in your local area as well. And then, beyond the certification program and all the support that comes with that, make sure you go out to our YouTube channel. That's the next slide. Bryce has created kind of how-to videos on how simple the platform is to use and manage on a regular basis. Again, simplicity is one of the things that we really want to emphasize to our dealer partners. Don't be scared. Once you start using the platform, it's so easy. And it's not only just easy for you, and we give you the dealer dashboard so you can look and see all of your accounts in one place and manage those accounts, but it's super easy for your end users as well, right? And one of the goals with cloud is to minimize those service calls that you get, minimize those truck rolls, minimize the pressure sometimes that gets put on your business by having to go out and do maintenance, right? So go out and look at the YouTube assets that we've created. I think they're really self-explanatory. They really break down the solution. Find the playlist, watch all the videos. We've got tons of webinars out there where we've talked about retail verticals, medical, cannabis, how-to videos. Go out there. We're always putting out new content. If there's something you don't see that you want, shoot a note to Bryce, okay? One of the things we will be doing with this webinar is we'll be processing this. So the goal is to probably have it up on the YouTube by the end of the day tomorrow. So if you came in late, if you just want to go back and kind of watch some of the things that Bryce walked through on the dashboard on the user interface, it'll be available for you here shortly, okay? More importantly, if you have any questions at all, reach out to your dedicated account manager. They can help get you in touch with Bryce and our cloud team. We're here to support you guys and gals. We want to help you grow your business. And we think that if you're not on the cloud bandwagon right now, you need to be, because there's a groundswell of interest from end users who are asking for cloud. And if you're not quoting cloud on every job, you're missing out. You're doing yourself a disservice and really tapping into what is really a growing part of the video surveillance industry. And when you think about IT and how everything else is moving to the cloud, this is the next logical thing. And I'll tell you, one thing we didn't talk about is IT managers love cloud because it makes their job much easier, right? Because it is so simple and requires so much less maintenance than traditional systems. So call us with any questions. We're here to support you. We're here to help you grow your business, and more importantly, from the entire Alibi security team, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate when you can spend some time with us on these webinars. Let us know how we can help you in your business. Thanks so much. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.